Hello and welcome to this educational platform of Ghatna Chakra book video. Our aim is to deliver knowledge to you in a simple, clear and accessible manner. Let us begin this journey of learning and success together.
You know how most of us go for a health checkup every year to see how we're doing? Well, what if an entire country did that? What would its financial report card even look like? We just got the results for India's economy, and today we're going to break it all down. So, what did the doctor find? Let's take a look.
Just think about it for a second. Instead of checking your blood pressure or cholesterol, you'd be looking at things like national debt, deficits, and spending habits. It's basically the ultimate financial physical. And when you're talking about a nation of over 1 billion people, the stakes are, well, incredibly high.
So the doctor in this scenario is India's top auditor, the Comptroller and Auditor General, or CAG for short. They've just finished their deep dive into the government's finances. So let's crack open their report and see what the diagnosis is for the country's economic health.
Okay, but before we jump into the results, we have to understand what the doctor is even looking for. What does a healthy economy even look like? What are the rules? Well, that rulebook is called the FRBM Act. The easiest way to think about this is like an official health and fitness plan for the entire economy. It's basically a set of rules designed to make sure the government doesn't spend too much or borrow recklessly. It's all about keeping the nation's finances strong and stable. And this fitness plan has some really specific goals. First, the central government's debt should be under 40% of the entire country's economic output, what we call GDP. The total debt, when you add in the states, should be under 60%. And the fiscal deficit, which is just the gap between what the government earns and what it spends each year, was supposed to be under 3%. These were the benchmarks for peak fiscal fitness. But, just like with any personal fitness plan, sometimes life happens. After a few major economic shocks, the government had to adjust and set a new, more immediate goal: get that annual deficit below 4.5% of GDP by 2026. Think of it as a more realistic milestone on the long road back to perfect health.
All right, now that we know the rules of the game, let's get to the main event, the test results for the government's debt. This is probably one of the most important vital signs we've got.
And right off the bat, the report gives us some good news. The central government's debt, as a percentage of our GDP, has been coming down steadily since it peaked during the pandemic. It dropped from over 61% all the way down to 57%. So the trend is definitely heading in the right direction. That's a big plus. But hold on a second. Remember that ideal target from the fitness plan? It's 40%. So while 57% is for sure better than 61%, we're still a long way from where the doctor ordered us to be. The patient is getting better, yeah, but isn't quite healthy yet.
So yes, the trend is good. We've got that. But that's really only looking at one side of the coin. Because when you stop looking at percentages and start looking at the actual numbers, the picture gets, well, a lot more complicated.
Now that is a massive number. What is it? Well, this is the plot twist in our little health report. So even while the ratio of debt to GDP was getting better, the actual mountain of debt got bigger. It grew by almost 10% in just 1 year. So how is that even possible? Well, it happens when the economy, the GDP, grows even faster than the debt does. It's kind of like your body fat percentage going down, even though you might have gained a couple of pounds on the scale. It's tricky.
So, if that growing mountain of debt is the condition, what are the symptoms? Well, one of the biggest ones is how much of your income gets eaten up just paying off the interest on old loans. And this is a pretty worrying symptom. After improving for a little bit, the chunk of government revenue being spent just on interest payments is creeping up again. Last year, more than 35 paisa of every single rupee the government collected went straight to paying interest. And that's why this really matters. This isn't just some abstract number on a chart. High interest payments mean there's less money left over for everything else we need, for new roads, better schools, public health care. It's a direct trade-off, plain and simple.
Now, for any good health checkup, you want the information to be crystal clear. But our financial doctor, the CAG, found something a little confusing in the government's paperwork. A conflicting prescription, you could say. The auditor basically had to ask which number is the right one, because when they looked at the fiscal deficit for last year, they found two different official figures floating around for the very same thing.
See, in one key budget document, the deficit is listed as 16.55 lakh crore rupees. But if you calculate it using the official FRBM Act formula, you get 16.02. Now, that kind of inconsistency is a red flag for any auditor. When you're talking about a nation's health report, every single number has to be perfectly reliable.
So, we've looked at all the tests, the debt ratio, the absolute debt, the interest payments, even the data consistency. What's the final diagnosis for India's fiscal health? What does it all mean? So here's the report card, all summed up. The debt to GDP ratio is getting better. That's a clear win. But on the flip side, the actual pile of debt is still growing, and so is the amount we spend on interest. Those are concerning. And that whole data consistency thing, that definitely needs some attention.
So, the final diagnosis is really one of cautious optimism. The patient's condition is stable, and it's even showing some real signs of improvement. But there are these underlying conditions, that growing pile of debt and rising interest costs, that absolutely need careful and continuous management if we want to avoid problems down the road. And that leaves us with one last, really big question. We seem to be moving in the right direction, for the most part. But given how big the challenges are, is the recovery plan actually working fast enough to get the patient back to full strength? That's the question everyone's going to be watching very closely until we get the next annual checkup.